Hello, I'm Judy Stiles. Thank you for joining us this week on Newsmakers. Well, the long-awaited general election is over, and now we're taking a look at the results and to the future. And joining me today, Congressman Billy Long. Thank you for being here today.
You bet. Always fun to be over here with Judy. And I'm sorry this is one of your last shows. I understand you're retiring.
That's right. It's coming close to an end, but I appreciate you coming and visiting with me. I know we've had numerous visits while you've been in office.
You bet.
So, well, the election was long-awaited. A lot of politicking before, but now it's over. Kind of your general feelings. I know even as we're recording this program, there's still a lot of questions, but your general feelings in this year's election.
I think there's good and bad to look at as in all things. You had the riots, the people wanted to go to socialism, things that, particularly on my side of the aisle, Southwest Missouri, were extremely concerned about. Do we really want to turn into a socialist country? And I think if you look at the election results, the Democrats were going to wipe us out. They were going to have this big tsunami blue wave come through and reduce the number of members, Republican members in the House of Representatives, take the Senate from Republican hands, put it in Democrat hands. Donald Trump was going to lose by 17, 18 points, and none of that happened. We're in recounts right now in the presidential race as we record this, and we actually gained seats on the Republican side in the House of Representatives, much to the chagrin of the Democrats. They had a very heated call yesterday with their Speaker Pelosi and some of their members that had lost, some that had won. And Jim Clyburn said something very prophetic, I think, yesterday. He said that if we run the next election on Medicare for all and on socialism, having socialism and defunding the police, he said, we're going to be totally out of power. He said that doesn't sell, and it didn't sell. Even though some of the states voted against the president, they not only sent their Republican member of Congress back, they knocked out some of their Democrat members of Congress to replace them with Republicans, which is very unusual. I mentioned off the air a minute ago that Kevin McCarthy, the leader, had called me on a Saturday and asked me to travel to Cedar Rapids, Iowa, to speak at a luncheon for one of our candidates who happened to be a former news anchor up there, Ashley Henson, and she'd been on the news for 7 years up there and decided that she wanted to do something about it and get to D.C., and she actually won her race. So, and we've got a big number of women that won this time. Elise Stefanik from New York ran a tremendous campaign recruiting women to run in a lot of these seats, and we're going to have the largest number of Republican women we've ever had, which is really good news, because as soon as a woman gets elected as a Republican, the Democrats, draw down on them and raise money and want to beat them, knock them out. So they say, oh, they don't have very many women on their side of the aisle.
So really, the polls beforehand and all the predictions were not successful. Everybody was,
they were awful. They were just absolutely awful. And I learned in my first congressional race that I call it an inexact art, not an inexact science, but an inexact art, because they poll inexactly. They get bad numbers.
Right.
And the art is deciding how much they can charge their client, the politician, so they can get them as a client next time. That's the art of the deal. And these polls aren't worth anything anymore. And election cycle after election cycle after election cycle have proved that. So, and then the national news media, which portend to be to the left, they want to grab onto these numbers. Trump doesn't have a chance. He's way down. He doesn't have a prayer. And Trump kept saying, I'm going to win this. I'm going to win. I'm going to win. The polls are off. And he was right about the polls being off. Whether he can pull it off here at the end, we don't know yet.
Right. Well, as we record this, it's still a lot of unknowns along those lines. So a lot of our viewers, you talk about the Democratic and the Republican conflicts in Washington, the partisanship. They're probably wondering, is this going to resolve some of that when people get back to work in Washington, especially on the congressional side in the Senate?
It will some. They say now that the most powerful couple in Washington is Mitch McConnell and Joe Biden, if Biden becomes president, because when Biden was vice president, he had to work a lot of deals with Mitch McConnell, and he received a lot of criticism from his left wing, said you give up too much, you negotiate too much with McConnell, but if you don't negotiate with the leader of the Senate, you're not going to get anything passed. So it will create a lot of compromise in that, to that degree.
Of course, everybody has to remember you have two branches of the legislative government, the House and the Senate. So you have, even though you might have still Democrat control on the House side, the Senate is still, as you said, Republican led.
Right. And one thing I think I've mentioned on here before, but it's worth mentioning again, I think that if you don't have 60 members on the Senate side, you can't go to cloture, you can't call a vote to the floor. So it's always taken compromise on that side. When we had the White House, the Senate, and the House, people say, well, you didn't get things done. Well, you don't understand that it takes 60 votes, and if you got 54 Republican senators, I think we did at the time, if you got to get 6 more to vote with you to even bring a bill to the floor. So it's always takes a lot of compromise on the Senate side.
Right. Well, looking at the House, when you go back to work in Washington, there's always what people call the lame duck session, the time between the change of government. What do you anticipate some of the challenges you'll be facing?
I think that we have to get a COVID package out for the people. There's a lot of people struggling, and we should have done it months ago. But politics being what they are, everybody wanted to handle that package as something for their political party. And I think Pelosi kind of came out on the short end of that stick by losing all the members. I think people put more blame on her because she came out with this grandiose $3 trillion whatever Christmas tree of and all these things that weren't even related to COVID that she wanted to pay for. And we said no. And so now we'll go back and come up with a COVID package that gets the money in the hands of the American people and really does another round of PPP, I would imagine, which helps a lot of businesses, helps a lot of schools like Missouri Southern. So that's what we look forward to getting done here at the end of the year.
So you think that could happen before the
yes,
Christmas
I think
season,
that it can,
tying it together and so
yeah.
forth? Well, we've heard a lot about, with the COVID situation, discussion between local control and national control of certain things. As far, are you hearing those concerns as well from constituents?
Somewhat, but I think that with the governor we have in Missouri, he kind of let the local municipalities take care of their own work and didn't shut down things, just whole house and make everything closed down. And so I think that that's kind of working itself out. There are a lot more COVID cases these days, which we hate to hear. The death rates are way, way down. It seems like a less viral strain of COVID that, there's still people that are deceasing from it. A lot of times I know in our area that a lot of them are nursing homes and have pre-existing conditions, comorbidities. And it seems like every day on the news you hear some of those. Once in a while, a young person, but I was talking to the president of Missouri State the other day, Cliff Smart, and he said that to his knowledge, nationwide, there's been 3 college students that have deceased from COVID. So 3 out of all the college, it's obviously not affecting that age group to the extent that it is the folks my age and above.
Right, so you may have the cases, but they're not being affected physically
Right, yeah.
from the disease. You mentioned the PPE, that ties into the economy. So people are probably concerned. There's still people without jobs, or what's going to happen with jobs or the stock market. What are your feelings about the economy post-election?
I'm very concerned about restaurants in particular. Restaurants were shut down for a long time except for drive-through, if they could accommodate people coming through a drive-through. Then when they reopened, they said, oh, you can only have 25% capacity. Well, most restaurants, it's a tough business, and most of them have trouble making it on 100% capacity. And without another round of PPP, I think you'll see a lot of restaurants shutter and not come back, which we don't want to see in Joplin, we don't want to see in Springfield, we don't want to see in Cassville, we don't want to see anywhere in Branson and the district that restaurants are forced to go out of business. So hopefully we can get this PPP done in time to salvage that, and if we have the vaccine that comes out in time and people starting to take advantage of the vaccine, and we can really get a handle on this COVID situation. I think that's, but you see France is trying to shut down their economy, and the people are rioting. We're not going to shut down again. And in this country, I can tell you, we are not going to shut down again, whether Joe Biden orders it or not. If he becomes president, it's not going to happen.
People aren't going to want that to happen.
No. There's just too many. I have a congressional buddy of mine, and Andy Barr, and his wife deceased at 39 years old, and he got her medical report that Kentucky's governor had shut down anything that wasn't considered emergency surgery. You couldn't do any kind of medical procedure. So pap smears, any kind of screening for cancer or anything couldn't be done. Well, she had a heart issue, and her doctor had written on the bottom on her chart in hand writing some kind of heart test. I can't remember exactly what it was. When virus subsides, echogram, it was echo when virus subsides. Well, she subsided before the virus. She left a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old. She died of a heart condition due to COVID. She didn't have COVID, but it was because she couldn't get her
the care.
Echo. She could have gotten in. They could have taken care of her problem. She'd be with us today. And Blaine Luke, our congressman up further north in Missouri, he said that he saw a study where 65,000 people a month have deceased during since the first year on all this COVID shutdown, since March particularly, I guess, when everybody went indoors and protect themselves from COVID, whether it was suicide or murder-suicide or like I say, cancerous choroidic cancer that weren't able to get screened in time or couldn't do echograms like poor Andy's wife couldn't get done. So
So a lot of medical conditions were put to the side because of the COVID
Exactly,
situation.
and that really hurt our hospitals too. And of course the PPP, came into play for the hospitals as it did for everyone else. And I think, and once the hospitals were able to do voluntary procedures, then they still some people were afraid to go into the hospital, afraid they'd catch COVID. I think those worries have subsided a little. So it's kind of an oxymoron. You've got COVID cases going up, but people don't seem as concerned about catching COVID because everyone pretty well knows someone's had it now, and there's varying degrees of how bad it was. Well, it wasn't as bad as the worst case of the flu I had. It was terrible. I was in the hospital. And one thing, I've talked to 2 or 3 doctors that said they actually killed a lot of people at the onset of this by the overuse of ventilators.
That was their approach at the beginning. I'm automatically
right. They thought everybody needed to be on a vent if you were having any issues with COVID at all, and they think that actually aggravated the situation and led to a lot of people passing away. That those people go in now to the hospital, they're not using a vent on them. They found out better techniques and better ways to work. And the president himself had COVID. Governor Parson and Teresa Parson, First Lady, had COVID, and First Lady of the United States had COVID. So everyone's kind of seen that some people get it and they're over it pretty quick. Other people, it's a long hospital stay and a tough struggle for them and their family. And I'm not downplaying at all the people that have, suffered severely from COVID or have had family members that are deceased from COVID. But it's just something that everybody is not going to shut down the economy again and go indoors and stay indoors because we don't have a vaccine out yet.
Speaking of the vaccine, a lot of people are probably wondering, when are we going to get a vaccine? What do you see as the government's role when we do have those vaccines?
Well, I think that we've done yeoman's work. I think the president did a great job with his fast tracking of the vaccine. We've got several companies competing for that vaccine, and if you get up early in the morning, turn on the stock market channel, you'll see that if one company comes out and they're getting closer to a vaccine, their stock will shoot up that day. And then if they have a little bad news the next day, it'll go back down. But I think that you got enough people in there competing for it. One issue is going to be, I think, the quantity. That's going to be a big issue. If we get a vaccine that's safe and everyone can use and is willing to use, you're going to have a quantity problem that we can't get enough of it produced soon enough to keep a lot of people happy.
So that'll be a priority situation of who receives them, first responders and so forth first.
Oh yeah, sure, exactly. Yeah, and God bless these first responders and these doctors and nurses and people that have seen some horrific things from the start of COVID. We voted on March 14th, and I've been home a lot since March 14th. That was one of the first COVID packages, I think the third COVID package we passed back then.
Right.
And that's when everything kind of started. From that forward has been shutting down, and it was shut down for a long time, and now it's opened back up. But I think that people are, I just feel sorry for all the nurses and doctors and people that had to go in day after day after day. And of course, I've got a friend that's a nurse, and he said, I live in a petri dish. He said, I know I'm going to get COVID because I'm around it every day.
Right. Well, I mentioned this has affected your operations in Washington too, as far as how the Congress operates. I know there have been questions: are they there, or how are they meeting? How have you been able to keep in touch with?
Yeah, I'll tell you a quick story. I was on an elevator with a Democrat member of Congress the other day, and I was kind of slouched in the corner, and I just looked at her and I said, "This is terrible." She said, "Oh, not only is it terrible," she said, "but I don't have any help." I said, "What do you mean you don't have any help?" She said, "My staff won't come in. I ought to fire them." And I said, "What?" She said, "My staff refuses to come in." Now, we all have 8 or 9 folks in the
Offices,
district, 8 or 9 folks at home to help us and look at legislation, or legislative assistants, legislative directors, or legal or legislative correspondents that return emails and phone calls and things to people. We always try and get back within 10 days with an answer for folks. She has no one in her office. And I said, "Well, I think I would fire them." But we've kept our Joplin office fully staffed, Springfield office fully staffed. We're on a rotating basis in Washington when I'm not there.
Right.
Some of the folks come in Tuesday, Thursday, some come in Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So everyone's doing the best they can. But if you're not a police officer, a cook, a janitor, you're not getting in the building. If you're not an employee, you're not getting in. If you're not a staffer of a congressman or senator, you're not getting in. Or if you're not a congressman or a senator, you're not getting in. And it's like the Twilight Zone. My office is in Rayburn, office building, big wide halls, and you usually have to fight your way down the hall because there's people everywhere every day.
Everybody wants to see the congressman.
We have meetings every 15 minutes in my office at my conference table. People from Missouri Southern. I was just speaking to one of them here before this that had come up and seen me with his daughter, and I got him in the White House to tour the White House. I met him over there, and we try and accommodate people as much as we possibly can, and it's just so different now.
So none of that's going on. If you go to Washington,
frankly, I'll vote and then I'll go back to my apartment, and I'll there's no committee hearings going on. You do your committee hearings on a laptop anymore, so I can do that from my apartment. I can do it from my office, but there's no need to go physically up to my office unless I have something particular I need to do. Used to be I'd go up there constantly to meet people. They'd be coming in. It was hectic like Grand Central Station, and now you just look at the four walls and go, it's just
So it's a struggle sometimes to keep those operations running and
different.
keep things going. I imagine.
Yeah, and it's just so different than what we're used to. But like I told that congresswoman, I said, this is awful. And she started telling me how bad it was. She didn't have any help. I said, well, at least I've got all my help. But when I'm there, my office is fully staffed when we're considering legislation and things.
Right. Well, earlier you mentioned of the follow-ups, and I know that you run the Energy and Commerce Committee. And the COVID situation, a lot of people had to go home. The schools shut down, and a lot of people became aware that there's not internet access a lot of places. So there's action being taken to help with that. Right.
That's one of my main things I've been working on for a few years here in Congress. I'm on the telecom subcommittee. I hope to move up in the ranks there. I'm working on that. Hopefully, I'll have some good news on that for too long. But I've really been working hard on the 5G and the mapping. A lot of people don't understand that mapping. Our maps are so out of date on where internet's available and where not 5G, but where rural broadband's available. I've been working on the rural broadband a lot, and so that's really something that we need to get out to everyone. And now, because I think this has changed our world, and it's changed it permanently. A lot of people used to commute in 45 minutes, hour and 15 minutes to New York City or Boston or Washington, D.C. to go to work, have been working from home, and they're getting everything, maybe more done at home than they were coming into the office.
Not spending
every
that
day. So I
commute
think a lot of these companies are going to say, just stay home. We'll reduce our footprint here. We'll take less office space than we used to take. And a lot of the banks, as you know, their lobbies are closed.
Right.
You can't get in their lobby unless by appointment, or if you're going to get in your safe deposit box, you have to call them from the parking lot and go in. And a lot of them are liking that. A lot of the bankers are going, this is great. And so I think you're going to see a lot of empty bank buildings eventually, and a lot of smaller banks being built when they do build a bank, and our world's changed.
So it's going to be a permanent change as far as depending on the internet, using that for communication.
Yes, yeah, people are going to be, needing that rural broadband, particularly in an area like me where I have such a vast rural district in my area, and that's something I've been very concerned about, and working with Ajit Pai of the FCC, and so we're working on getting it out to
helping smaller cities and rural communities as well, and doing that together. Earlier you mentioned media, and you've also expressed some concerns about media and the social media aspect. And with the election, of course, social media was everywhere, all aspects of it.
Right.
But it's become part of everybody's life now too. So
right. And I think it all ties in part and parcel to the polling, how inaccurate the polling numbers were, and then the networks run with and then people get on the internet and start commenting. And I was watching NBC yesterday, I think it was yesterday, or maybe the day before, I think it was yesterday. And anyway, the president was having a live, remarks he was delivering, and Lester Holt couldn't control himself. He said, well, the president is making a lot of inaccurate statements during this time. And he said that he interrupted the guy 3 times.
So he's speaking
and
over.
And finally, they pulled away from the president, cut his mic, showed him in the background, and Chuck Todd and Lester Holt start, instantaneous fact checking on the president, saying he was a liar. And it just, the media is so far to the left, it's unbelievable.
And the social media has also been a concern, the effects of Facebook and Instagram and so forth. And we've had concerns even on the Senate side in Washington, that affecting people.
Right. And they've had Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey from Twitter up there recently, and Zuckerberg did decent. Jack had pretty rough day. And but when they're shutting down conservative voices, and they're shutting down the president's voice, if he sends out a tweet they don't like, they'll just take it down now. And so there's going to be a lot of, they're protected from a lot of things, and we control a lot of that in Washington. So if they're not going to be a fair arbiter, and stand behind the First Amendment, let people say what they want to say, it's going to be bad.
So you could have some changes along the lines from
Yeah,
there, right?
yeah.
Also, with the energy aspect, that's one of the topics we heard in the presidential campaign, the future of energy in America and so forth. So, what are your feelings of their proposals that we're going to have clean, green energy? We're going to do the challenges to the oil industry. Where are we possibly heading with that?
Everyone wants to move away from oil at some point. They want, if you could have all the wind you need and all the solar you need and all, but right now that is so unpractical that it's just not in the cards right now to just get away from carbon fuels. What that Vice President Biden has said he wants to if he is the eventual winner of the election. And then he said, well, I don't want to do away with fracking. Well, fracking has saved us, and that's why we're paying $1.69 today for gas instead of $4.69 that we were a few years ago. And people have short memories; they don't remember that. But you get those gas prices up $3.50, $4 a gallon anymore, you're going to need an auctioneer to have to keep up with it. $3, $3.25, $3.50 instead of about $4.
So we become a producing country on the oil aspect versus a consuming country.
Yes. We used to say, that Saudi Arabia was the lead, but now we're in the lead on oil production.
So that's something we could be looking at down the road. Well, as you come to the district and visit now your representatives in your office, what are some of the concerns you're hearing from your constituents?
The main, they really are very easy to take care of. They don't have a lot of concerns. The main thing that I always want to put out on your program is that people can call us with any issue, and we're going to work on it. I can't guarantee a good result, but I'll guarantee a very good effort. Veterans issues, I took 54 veterans fishing on Wednesday of this week, the day after the election. Took 54 veterans fishing down on Table Rock Lake. We do that every year with our veterans program, and we have great results for our veterans. But if you got a problem with the SBA, anything, if you have a passport issue, which you may not have because people aren't traveling much right now, but if your passport expires during this downtime and then you decide you want to go somewhere, you might have to give Kim in our Joplin office a call and have her set up a quick meeting down in Little Rock for you to attend and get your passport renewed or whatever. So congressional offices do so much that people don't ever realize, and we can help you with a lot of things. So we want to always encourage them to reach out to us and let us be of help to them.
So imagine some people might get frustrated at times with what they call the bureaucracy of the agencies in Washington. You can help maybe open some doors for them to get things done.
That's exactly right. If you call and go on hold with them, you're going to be on hold for a long, long time. If you call us, a lot of times we can cut through the red tape, and especially if I get involved personally, my staff will try maybe for a day or two to help you, but if they're getting stonewalled, and say, well, we'll have the congressman call you, and sometimes just saying that we'll get a result, but when the congressman does call, we get really good results. So we always want to, hear the good stories, the success stories where we're able to help people, because that's what the job's all about, is constituent services.
Well, when you head back to Washington, despite, no matter what the results of the presidential election are, what are you looking forward to most on the House side, going back as congressman?
Well, I think that some of the things we've talked about on my committee in particular, the rural broadband and things like that, we will continue down that path, and that's going to be the big push for me personally. That's my favorite subcommittee that I'm on. I'm on the healthcare subcommittee also, and on the environment subcommittee. But I think that those are and energy and commerce, between that and Ways and Means, are the two most powerful. And we argue about which one's more powerful, but we have a lot of jurisdiction on a lot of things on energy and commerce, and it'll be good to get the new numbers out there. We're actually going to have more seats on energy and commerce because we picked up seats in the House.
So that'll add to
those committees they're juried by how many Democrats are in Congress, how many Republicans. So that's one thing I haven't seen anywhere in the news media, but we're going to actually have a little more power, more votes on the committees.
So with the additional members in Congress, there's a restructuring as far as the setup of your committees.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And we've had, in my case in particular, we've had several of our members retire this year off the Energy and Commerce Committee, some above me on the podium, some below, so I'll move up some seats regardless of what happens. But yeah, and then, a lot of times on the Democrat side, there'll be people picked out. If Joe Biden becomes president, then there's going to be, Democrats picked out of the House to go to work in his administration, so that's going to open up a spot or two, and so you got to always kind of keep those numbers as best you can. But this is the first Congress ever we haven't done a group picture. Ever Congress from I don't know how far back. At the first of the Congress, we'd always do a group picture.
Everybody gets together.
435 people on the House floor, sitting there, turning around, looking up at the camera, mugging for the camera. And they didn't do it the first year of this Congress, the 105th And then the next one they didn't do this year, and of course then with COVID, so
Couldn't get everybody
this
in.
is the first time you're not going to have a group picture of the 435 folks that are representing everybody.
Well, so you have to get
And
individuals.
another thing, the ones that retired or got beat, I got news from them. They get back next week, they don't have a desk anymore. They don't have an office. They get a cubicle about the size of that screen right there. And
the new person starts moving in.
well, they don't move in until January
Right.
3rd of next year, but they have to
Remodel.
clean the carpets, paint, fix the drape, whatever, and get them clean and ready to go. Well, then we have a lottery system, so if there's some prime offices, the more seniority you have, you get to pick earlier, and then we all draw a ping pong ball and get our pecking order in our class to decide if. And the last 2 times I haven't moved, I like my office. If I get just a killer office, I guess, that looks right at the Capitol, I might want to move, but then I'll probably never look out that window to look at the Capitol. Everybody wants a Capitol view, but then nobody ever looks at
They
the
don't turn around to
Capitol.
look.
But I've got a nice view of the Washington Monument, and so I've got a really nice office, I think.
Great. Well, I would like to thank you for visiting with us. I know that there's a lot still to happen in Washington, and the ability to get that information back to the people, and you keep it, the communications aspect of what
Right,
happened.
right. And like I say, the stock market really likes what's going on. They like a little gridlock. They didn't want to see a big blue wave. They didn't want to see a big red wave, and so they got. The pollsters were so far off that I think that everybody's kind of trying to reassess. Well, what happened? The Democrats were supposed to pick up all these seats and knock out all the Republicans out of the House. They were going to pick up the Senate. Joe Biden was going to win by 17 points, and none of that happened. So I think everybody's kind of in a wait and see. But the stock market apparently likes gridlock, which you have to negotiate, and negotiation's not a bad thing.
And one last thought about the stock market. So many people have the 401ks and retirement plans now that the stock market means more to more than just the people in New York who are on the market.
Exactly. And that's one thing about Donald Trump, what he was able to do, having his head held underwater for 3 years and 9 months. He'd pop up for breath there and be Russia, collusion, impeach. I said, why are you going to impeach the guy? Beat him in November. It's not that far to November. And so, but people open up that 401k statement. I know the day after the election, the market went way up. The day after that, it went way up. It was started up the next day. I don't know how it ended, but apparently the stock market likes the results a lot more than the Republicans do on the presidential side anyway. We're still pulling for Trump. We're still doing everything we can. I communicated with his chief of staff today, his campaign manager. I said, anything I can do, anywhere I can go. I'll be on the next plane if I need to go in and help with the ballot observations or whatever I need to do, or speak somewhere for the president. I'll be glad to do that. But the more this thing drags on, the more mystery ballots seem to be appearing, and it's really a sad state of affairs for our country.
Well, Congressman Long, I'd like to thank you very much for visiting with me while you're in Joplin today.
Well, you're always so pleasant, Judy. I'm sure going to miss you, and I know all your followers and everybody, your viewers, are going to miss you also. And but have fun and whatever your next step in life is out there.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I'd like to thank you for joining us this week for Newsmakers. I'm Judy Stiles. Hope you can join us again at the same time on the station.